The boy lying inert in that tomb falls into a deep sleep, enveloped by the darkness of the wintry night. A cold atmosphere penetrates to the bones, as if winter itself were seeping into his soul. The winds whip the cemetery with force, raising clouds of dust that dance in the air, shrouding the boy in a mantle of desolation. His small hands tremble as he clings to the cold surface of the tombstone, his fingers brushing against the inscriptions worn by time. The pale and distant moon barely illuminates the place, casting grotesque shadows that twist among the graves like hungry specters. "Mom," the boy whispers with a voice broken by pain and despair. "Take me with you. I've asked so many times and you never took me." The wind whistles through the nearby trees, as if nature itself mourns the tragedy unfolding before it. He feels the cold penetrate deeper, a sensation that seems to drag him into a bottomless abyss. Tears mix with dust on his face, tracing lines of pain and loneliness. "Why did you leave me, Mom?" he whispers, barely audible, as if fearing to disrupt the delicate balance of the night. The sound of an owl breaks the sepulchral silence, its echo resonating among the tombs like a lament. The boy clings tighter to the tombstone, as if he could find solace in the cold wall lying beneath his hands. The world seems to stop in that moment, as if the boy's pain freezes time. Darkness closes in around him, engulfing him in a desolate embrace. "You promised you'd always be with me," the boy murmurs through sobs. "But now I'm alone, lost in the darkness." The echo of his words fades into the air, mingling with the wind sighs and the branches creaks. The boy sinks even deeper into his deep sleep, allowing the night to consume him entirely. But what happened to this boy, and why was he alone in that tomb? Abandoned? Join us to discover the development of this beautiful story. The sun shone weakly through the kitchen window as Angela, her forehead furrowed with worry, absent-mindedly flipped through a magazine while waiting for the coffee to finish brewing. A weight of uneasy sensation had settled in her chest for weeks, and she couldn't ignore the sense that something was wrong. It was during one night, while taking a shower, that Angela noticed a strange lump in her left breast. Her fingers trembled as she touched it, and a wave of panic washed over her as she felt its hardness beneath her fingertips. Tears welled up in her eyes as she collapsed in the shower, fearing the worst. Determined not to ignore her instinct, Angela scheduled an appointment with her trusted doctor the next day. The hours dragged on until she finally found herself sitting in the waiting room, her heart pounding in her chest. The doctor greeted her with a reassuring smile, but the look in his eyes did not escape Angela. After performing a series of tests and examinations, the doctor informed her that he found a suspicious lump in her breast and that she would need to undergo a biopsy to determine its nature. Time seemed to stand still as Angela processed the news. Tears filled her eyes as the doctor explained the process and the possible results. But even before the biopsy was performed, Angela already knew deep down what to expect. Days later, Angela returned to the doctor's office with a heavy heart of fear as she waited for the results. When the doctor confirmed her worst fears, the news hit her like a punch to the stomach. "I'm sorry, Angela," the doctor said with compassionate voice. "The biopsy results confirm that it's breast cancer, and not only that, it has progressed significantly, unfortunately. At this point, there is no cure." The doctor's words echoed in the room, plunging Angela into an abyss of despair. "There's nothing I can do," she said with a choked voice, struggling to contain the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. The doctor shook his head, offering a sympathetic look. "The best thing you can do now is spend time with your family. Focus on living each day to the fullest and find comfort in the love and support of your loved ones." Angela felt overwhelmed by sadness, realizing that her world was crumbling around her. With a heavy heart, she returned home to face her husband, Jairo, and her son, Gabriel, with the devastating truth. The anguished expression on their faces as they heard the news was a perfect reflection of her own pain, and together they embraced, finding solace in their mutual love amidst the approaching storm. At first, Angela did not need the pain medications prescribed to her. Despite the persistent discomforts in her life, she continued with relative normalcy. She tried to keep busy, active with household chores and moments shared with her husband, Jairo, and her son, Gabriel. However, as the months passed, the disease began to take its toll. Fatigue dominated more often, forcing her to rest more than usual. Daily activities became more difficult to perform, and slowly Angela found herself having to set aside some of her usual responsibilities. The discomfort in her breast intensified over time, becoming a constant and debilitating pain. Nights became increasingly difficult to bear, with pain interrupting her sleep and leaving her exhausted upon waking. As her health deteriorated, Gabriel became her rock, her source of strength and comfort in the midst of the storm. Despite his tender age, the boy showed extraordinary maturity and compassion, caring for his mother with tenderness and devotion. Gabriel accompanied her to every doctor's visit, holding her hand firmly as they waited for the results of the analyses. He helped her with household chores, taking on responsibilities far beyond his years. His radiant smile, his unconditional love, were the balm Angela needed to continue in the darkest moments. She found solace in her son's comforting arms, in the words of encouragement whispered in her ear when hopelessness threatened to consume her completely. Through his constant presence, his unwavering love, Gabriel reminded Angela that she was not alone in this battle, that together they could face any challenge life presented. Despite the pain and uncertainty that accompanied each day, Angela found strength to continue thanks to her son's unconditional love and support. Together, mother and son would face a future with courage and determination, united in their fight against the disease threatening to tear them apart. The afternoon slid slowly into night as Angela called Gabriel to her side in the small corner of the living room where they used to sit together to talk. Angela's gaze was filled with tenderness and determination as Gabriel sat in front of her. "Dear Gabriel," Angela began, holding her son's hands in hers, "there's something important I need to tell you, something that can't wait." Gabriel's eyes filled with concern upon hearing the serious expression on his mother's face. "What's wrong, Mom? Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Angela smiled sweetly, trying to calm his worries. "I'm okay, my love," she assured him. "But there's something we need to discuss, something about the future." Gabriel looked at her curiously, waiting for her to continue. "My dear Gabriel, I know things have been difficult lately," Angela began with a gentle voice, "and I want you to know that I will always be with you every step of the way, even when I'm no longer physically present." Her mother's words echoed in Gabriel's heart, filling him with a mixture of sadness and determination. "But, Mom, what do you mean by when you're no longer physically present?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. Angela kept her gaze steady on her son, conveying all her love and wisdom in that crucial moment. "It means there will be times when you'll have to rely more on Daddy," she explained gently. "You'll have to listen to him and take care of each other." Tears began to stream down Gabriel's cheeks as he absorbed his mother's words. "But Mom, I don't want you to go," he sobbed, embracing her tightly. Angela enveloped her son in a comforting hug, feeling his pain and love intertwined. "I know, my love," she whispered, "but remember that I'll always be in your heart, guiding and protecting from wherever I am." The warmth of her mother's embrace gave Gabriel strength to face the challenges that would come in the uncertain future. In that moment, he understood the importance of his mother's words, promising to carry them with him in every step of his journey. Gabriel remembered the days at school when everyone brought their mothers to activities and he felt alone. He watched his friends sharing laughs and hugs with their mothers and desperately wished he had his by his side. One afternoon, after a school presentation, Gabriel approached Angela with tears in his eyes and asked why she could never accompany him like other mothers did. Angela tenderly stroked her son's hair and said softly, "Gabriel, I understand that you feel lonely at those times, but I want you to know that I'm always with you, even if I can't be physically present at all your activities. My love for you is unwavering and always accompanies you in every smile, every tear, every step you take." His mother's wise words touched Gabriel's heart deeply, giving him comfort and strength amidst his feelings of loneliness. From that day on, he learned to carry with him his mother's love and presence in every moment of his life, finding solace in the certainty that even if she couldn't be physically present, her love would always surround him, guiding and protecting him every step of the way. The night enveloped the room with its dark cloak as Angela slept deeply there. The change that had occurred in her body, however, something disturbing interrupted her peaceful sleep. Angela woke up startled, feeling a strange numbness in her legs. She tried to move them, but they didn't respond. A shiver of fear ran down her spine as she tried to understand what was happening. "Dear Angela, what's happening?" Jairo, her husband, asked, still sleepy. Angela struggled to find the right words, her voice trembling with anxiety. "Jairo, I can't feel my legs," she said with a choked voice, panic palpable in her words. Jairo sat up abruptly, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean? Let me see," he exclaimed, turning on the bedside lamp. Gabriel, who had been awakened by his mother's cries, ran to the room, concern written on his face. "What's happening, Mom? Are you okay?" he asked, holding Angela's hand with concern. Angela struggled to hold back tears as she explained what was happening. "I don't know, Gabriel. I just can't move my legs," she admitted with a trembling voice. Jairo helped her sit on the bed as he examined her legs for any sign of what could be causing the loss of mobility. His expression darkened as he realized that something serious was happening. "We need to call an ambulance," Jairo said firmly, urgency evident in his voice. Angela felt resigned, knowing there was no other option. As they waited for the ambulance to arrive, Gabriel approached his mother, holding her hand with tenderness. "Everything will be okay, Mom," he said softly, trying to convey strength and hope. "We'll be here with you, no matter what happens." Tears flooded Angela's eyes as she hugged her son tightly, feeling the love and support of her family in that moment of anguish and confusion. Despite the fear that overwhelmed them, they clung to each other, finding comfort in the unity and love they shared. The doctor entered the room with an aura of solemnity, carrying with him the X-rays that revealed a bitter truth. Angela and Jairo exchanged worried glances as the doctor sat before them. "Angela, Jairo," the doctor began with a grave tone. "The test results are in. I'm sorry to inform you that the cancer has progressed. A tumor has formed on one of the vertebrae of the spinal column, affecting the motor function of the legs." Angela's heart stopped in her chest as she absorbed the doctor's words. "What does this mean?" she asked with a trembling voice. "It means that the tumor is pressing on the spinal cord, causing the loss of mobility in the legs," the doctor explained with compassion. "This is a complicated development, but we are doing everything we can to address it and find more suitable treatment options." Jairo held Angela's hand tightly, seeking solace in the midst of the devastating news. "Is there anything we can do?" he asked desperately. The doctor nodded solemnly. "Right now, the most important thing is to maintain a positive attitude and explore all available treatment options. I'm here to help you every step of the way." After the consultation, Angela and Jairo returned home with the weight of the diagnosis on their shoulders. The shadow of cancer seemed to envelop them, obscuring even the brightest moments of their lives. Over the days, depression began to suffocate Angela. She felt trapped in a whirlwind of pain and despair, unable to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Tears became her constant companion, and the feeling of helplessness consumed her from within. One night, in the darkness of her room, Angela found herself at the abyss. The weight of her illness seemed too giant to bear, and the idea of a life marked by disability was too much to face. With trembling hands, she reached for a bottle of pills, contemplating the idea of ending her suffering. Just as she was about to make the fatal decision, the door suddenly opened. Gabriel rushed into the room, his eyes meeting his mother's, filled with concern and fear. "Mom, what are you doing?" Gabriel asked with a choked voice, running towards her and taking the pills from her hands. Angela collapsed into tears, feeling the weight of her overwhelming despair. "I can't bear it anymore," she said, sobbing, and then embraced her son tightly. Gabriel embraced her with love, feeling his mother's anguish reflected in his own heart. As the night turned into dawn, mother and son clung to each other in a tearful embrace. The darkness of depression still surrounded them, but in the midst of the storm, they found a ray of hope in the unbreakable love they shared. The afternoon slowly turned into night as Angela and Gabriel sat together on the living room couch, enveloped in tense silence. Angela's husband, Jairo, was working late that night, leaving them alone to face the weight of the illness that had invaded their home. Angela looked at her son with concern, noticing the shadow of sadness in his eyes. "Dear Gabriel, are you all right?" she asked softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Gabriel sighed, but couldn't hide the pain that afflicted him. "I'm fine, Mom," he replied weakly, avoiding eye contact. Angela felt a lump in her throat seeing her son's suffering. "I know it's been difficult for all of us," she admitted sadly, "but I want you to know that I'll always be here for you, no matter what happens." Gabriel nodded, but his eyes glistened with tears threatening to fall. "I know, Mom," he murmured, struggling to contain the avalanche of emotions overwhelming him. A heavy silence settled between them, filled with unspoken words and unexpressed emotions. Angela wished she could alleviate her son's pain, but felt powerless in the face of the illness that had invaded their lives. Suddenly, the door opened and Jairo entered the room, exhaustion evident in every feature of his face. "Hello, everyone," he said with a forced laugh, barely noticing the tension in the air. Angela looked at him sadly, feeling the distance that had settled between them. "Hello, dear," she replied with a muted voice, struggling to find the right words to express her pain. Gabriel rose from the couch and ran to his father, clinging to his legs tightly. "Daddy," he murmured with anxious voice, seeking comfort in his father's arms. Jairo stroked his son's hair tenderly, feeling the weight of his suffering in every gesture. "What's wrong, son?" he asked with concern, feeling a knot in his stomach seeing the pain in his son's eyes. Gabriel moved away from his father's arm and looked at him with teary eyes. "Daddy, Mommy is very sick," he said with a choked voice, barely able to pronounce the words due to emotion. Jairo was speechless, feeling a tightness in his heart facing the harsh reality of the situation. "I know, son," he replied hoarsely, struggling to contain his own emotions. "But we're in this together, right? We'll support each other no matter what happens." The three of them hugged tightly, seeking comfort in love and mutual support. Despite the pain and uncertainty surrounding them, they found strength to face the future together, united in their fight against the disease that threatened to tear them apart. The night enveloped the house in tense silence as Jairo picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. After a few seconds, a female voice answered sweetly, "Hello, Jairo. How are you?" Jairo tried to sound upbeat. "Hello, Dora. I'm fine, and you?" Dora's voice became affectionate. "Better now that I'm talking to you. What are you doing?" Jairo looked at Angela's bedroom door, where he knew Gabriel was sleeping alone. "I was thinking about you," he replied with a smile. Dora chuckled softly. "You're so sweet, Jairo. I can't wait to see you again." Jairo's heart raced nervously as he prepared for what he was about to say next. "Dora, I need to talk to you about something important," he began, his voice trembling with the weight of what he was about to reveal. "What happened, darling? Are you okay?" Dora asked with concern. Jairo took a deep breath, trying to gather the courage needed to confess the truth. "It's about Angela," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "Her condition has worsened and, well, I can't help but think about the future. Dora's voice filled with compassion.
I'm sorry, Jairo.
It must be hard for you, she said sincerely. Jairo nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Yes, it is, but it also makes me think about us, about our future together, he continued, adopting a tone of determination surprised by his own words. What do you mean, Jairo? Jairo swallowed hard, knowing that what he was about to say next would change everything. Dora, I need you to know that I want to be with you. I want to build a life together, but I need Angela, well, not to be here anymore. There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line as Dora processed what she had just heard. Jairo, I don't know what to say, she finally murmured, her voice filled with confusion and anguish. Jairo hurried to continue, feeling the urgency to express his feelings. I understand, Dora, but I believe we can be happy together, without having to worry about pain and sadness. As Jairo spoke to Dora, Gabriel, who listened to every word from the other side of the slightly ajar door, felt as if his world was crumbling around him. Tears filled his eyes as he heard his own father confessing his true feelings, revealing a cruelty he had never seen before. Gabriel's heart filled with indescribable pain as he realized that his own father felt nothing for his mother, that he was only waiting for her death to start a new life with another woman. He felt betrayed, abandoned, and utterly alone in his grief, with tears streaming down his cheeks. Gabriel quietly stepped away from the door, feeling as if he had lost not only his mother but also his father at that moment. He understood that true family wasn't always the one who shared the same blood, but the one that remained united in the darkest and most difficult moments. And although his heart was broken, he knew he would find the strength to move forward, alone and with his mother, facing the future with courage and determination. Gabriel, with a heart full of anguish and tears in his eyes, curled up in his bed, feeling the weight of uncertainty. Who will I stay with if Mommy is gone and Daddy starts another family? He whispered softly, his voice muffled by grief. The boy felt lost, fearful of facing the future alone. I don't want to be alone, he murmured between sobs, his voice just a whisper in the darkness of his room. Without a second thought, Gabriel got up from his bed and headed to his mother's room in hopes of finding comfort in her warm embrace. Carefully, he opened the door and approached the bed where his mother was battling the disease that consumed her. Mommy? Gabriel called softly, his heart pounding in his chest. Angela lifted her tired eyes, but filled with love, upon seeing her son standing at the door. What's wrong, my love? She asked weakly, reaching out a hand towards him. With a sigh of relief, Gabriel ran to the bed and snuggled beside his mother, seeking the comfort and security that only she could offer. Can I sleep with you tonight, Mommy? He asked with a trembling voice, his eyes brimming with tears. Angela embraced him tenderly, feeling the love and vulnerability of her son in that moment. Of course, my love, she replied softly, stroking his hair gently. That night, Gabriel fell asleep with a heart full of love and gratitude, knowing that, at least for now, he had his mother by his side. Although worries and fears still lingered in his mind, he found comfort in his mother's embrace, promising himself that revealing the truth would only bring more suffering to her, and that, for now, all he wanted was to make her happy and be by her side in every moment. The days passed with painful slowness as the disease advanced with relentless ferocity. Angela could barely articulate words. Her breathing became a nearly imperceptible whisper, and oxygen became her faithful companion with every breath. Her weakness was palpable. Her body fought a lost battle, and Gabriel, her son, watched with despair. Mama, why can't you come with me to school like other moms? Gabriel murmured, his eyes filled with tears, while his mother could barely respond. Cancer had undermined her strength to the point where a simple act of speaking became an insurmountable challenge. Angela's face was pale and haggard. Her body had been devastated by the disease. Cancer had eaten away at her bones, causing a condition called hypercalcemia, in which excess calcium in the blood poisoned her body with toxins. Even her mind was affected, her essence slowly fading away, leaving only an echo of what once was. Gabriel desperately longed for a connection with his mother, a conversation, a gesture of love, but he knew it was no longer possible. "Mommy, please talk to me," he begged desperately, but only silence answered. With determination and love in his heart, Gabriel decided to take his mother to a special place by the seaside. "Come on, Mommy, I want you to see the sea," he said softly as they left the house. The compassionate looks of passers-by followed them as they walked the streets. "Poor thing, taking his sick mother," some whispered, while others simply watched them with sadness. "Must be tough for that boy," they murmured among themselves. Arriving at the seaside, Gabriel let his mother rest on the sand. The sound of waves breaking gently on the shore was comforting. "We'll always be together, Mommy, remember?" Gabriel murmured, wiping the tears from his eyes. The sun was setting slowly on the horizon, painting the sky with golden and rosy hues. Angela let go of his hand, her breathing becoming even weaker until it finally stopped altogether. "Mommy, please don't go," Gabriel cried out between sobs, holding his mother's cold hand. "I want to have you a little longer." The people watching from afar fell silent, respecting Gabriel's grief at the loss. He stood there, alone with his mother, without the comforting presence of his father, facing the gut-wrenching reality of being alone in the world. The sound of the phone broke the silence in Jairo and Dora's house. Wrapped in an aura of apathy and detachment, Jairo answered the phone without concern, unaware that he would receive news that would change his life forever. "Hello," Jairo answered, his voice distant, without worries. "Mr. Jairo, we regret to inform you that your wife Angela has passed away," announced the voice on the other end of the line, laden with solemnity and compassion. He barely reacted. His mind had already charted a new course for his life. "Finally," he murmured to himself without a hint of emotion. Upon arriving at the hospital, he found his son Gabriel, who was silent, with swollen eyes from crying and a heart broken by the loss. But Jairo barely paid attention to him. "What happened, Daddy? Is Mommy okay?" Gabriel asked, with a trembling voice, desperately seeking comfort in his father's eyes. Jairo looked at him coldly, without a trace of compassion in his gaze. "It's over, son," he replied disdainfully. "It's better that Angela is in heaven now." Gabriel's heart sank even further upon hearing his father's empty words. He knew there was no pain in them, only indifference. After the burial, upon returning home, Dora appeared at the door with an authoritarian and ruthless attitude. "It's time to get rid of these memories," she ordered coldly, as she began to throw away any object that might remind them of Angela. Gabriel clung desperately to memories of his mother, refusing to let them go. "Stop it! It's all I have of my mother," he exclaimed with a trembling voice, but Dora showed no sign of compassion. Jairo watched the scene with indifference, not intervening to stop her. "Let go, Gabriel," he murmured emotionlessly, his voice just a whisper in the air. Gabriel's heart shattered as he realized that not even his own father defended him, that there was no place for him in his father's world and that of his new partner. He felt alone and abandoned, with no one to support him amidst the pain and suffering. The house was shrouded in tense silence as Dora, Gabriel's new stepmother, acted with cold, calculated eyes, knowing that he was the only obstacle in her path to completely winning over Jairo's heart and gaining absolute control over the house. With a fake smile on her lips, Dora approached Gabriel and looked at him disdainfully. "Gabriel, what have you done?" she asked accusingly, although her mind was already prepared for the response she would give herself. The boy looked at her with confusion, not understanding why he was being scolded. "Nothing, Dora. I didn't do anything wrong," he replied sincerely, his eyes filled with innocence. But Dora had already decided his fate. "Don't lie to me, Gabriel," she said harshly. "I received complaints about your misbehavior at school. I won't tolerate that attitude in this house." Gabriel was speechless, unable to understand how he could be punished for something he hadn't done. But before he could protest, Dora dragged him to his room and locked him in as punishment, ignoring his pleas of innocence. While Jairo was away from home, Dora seized the opportunity to carry out her diabolical plan. She climbed the stairs determinedly and opened Gabriel's door with an air of triumph. "Get up, worthless boy," she shouted fiercely, her eyes gleaming with malice. Gabriel got up from the bed in fear, wondering what else his new stepmother could do. But he never imagined what would come next. With cruelty in her voice, Dora glared at him. "Here," she said with contempt. "Get out of this house and never come back. You're a burden to me and to your father." Gabriel's heart stopped in his chest as he heard Dora's cruel words, tears springing from his eyes as the reality of his situation sank into his fragile soul. Without anywhere to go, without a home to call his own, the abandoned boy was forced onto the streets. At just 11 years old, he made his way to the only place that offered him a glimpse of solace amidst his despair: the cemetery. Amidst the shadows of the night, Gabriel stood before the imposing gates of the cemetery, which separated him from the last refuge he had in the world, his mother's grave. With his heart pounding in his chest and tears streaming down his face, the boy desperately sought a way in. Upon finding the perimeter of the cemetery, his eyes fixated on a small opening in one of the gates. Without hesitation, he squeezed through the narrow space, ignoring the fear gripping him and the warning whispers of the wind. Once inside, Gabriel walked among the graves, guided by the faint glow of the moon and the echo of his sobs. Each step brought him closer to the only solace he knew: his mother's eternal presence. Finally, he found the freshly marked tombstone bearing his mother's name, Angela. He knelt before it, his hands trembling as he caressed the cold stone. "Mom, Mom," he murmured with a choked voice, his heart breaking with each word. "Please don't leave me alone. I'm so scared without you." With tears flooding his eyes, Gabriel lay down on his mother's grave, embracing the cold marble as if it were his only comfort. "Take me with you, Mom," he sobbed, his voice lost in the whisper of the wind. The wind blew strongly, stirring up the desert dust surrounding the cemetery, enveloping the boy in a cloud of desolation and sorrow. Despite the cold of the night, Gabriel scarcely felt his inner pain. It eclipsed any physical sensation, his heart heavy with sadness and his soul exhausted from suffering. Gabriel succumbed to a sleep filled with nightmares and tears, clinging to the hope that, at least in his dreams, he could find some solace in his mother's arms. The cemetery caretaker was paralyzed with shock at the desolate scene before his eyes. A boy covered in dirt, lying on a tombstone, his face marked by pain and despair. He hurried over, his heart pounding in his chest, as he tried to understand how this helpless boy had ended up there. Meanwhile, Jairo returned home, his mind filled with worry over Gabriel's absence. Upon entering, he heard Dora attempting to explain the inexplicable, one lie after another, trying to cover her malice with empty words. But Jairo didn't believe for a second in his new wife's words. He had installed security cameras in the house and knew the truth. "I can't believe what you've done to my son," Jairo shouted with fury, his eyes filled with disillusionment and anger. "I recorded you, Dora. I saw everything you did to Gabriel. I can't believe I was so blind not to see what kind of person you are. I was even capable, deep down, of wishing for my wife's death to be with you. We're both truly despicable human beings." Dora, aware that her deceit had been uncovered, had no choice but to flee from home, knowing she could no longer hide her wickedness. Meanwhile, Jairo, desperate, roamed the streets in search of his son Gabriel. "Where are you?" he shouted with a trembling voice of anguish, but found no trace of him anywhere. That's when he received the dreaded phone call. On the other end of the line, the voice of the police officer delivering terrible news. "Are you the father of a boy named Gabriel?" asked the officer. Jairo gripped the phone tightly, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes, it's me," he responded with a trembling voice, anticipating the worst. The officer delivered the dreadful news. Something very bad had happened to Gabriel. With a heavy heart, Jairo rushed to the police station, his mind filled with fears and unanswered questions. Upon arrival, he saw his son sitting in a corner, wrapped in a blanket. His heart swelled with relief at seeing him safe and sound, but also with sadness at realizing the suffering his little one had endured. He approached Gabriel and hugged him tightly, promising never to leave him alone again, swearing to protect him with all his soul. Jairo knelt before Gabriel, his gaze filled with love. Many hours had passed since they reunited at the station, but each minute was agony for Jairo, tormented by his own mistakes and by his son's suffering. "Gabriel, my son," Jairo began with a trembling voice, feeling the overwhelming weight of his words. "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am. I was a terrible father, blinded by my own pain and by the desire to find solace in someone else." Gabriel looked up at his father, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and hope. "Daddy, it wasn't your fault," he murmured softly, his heart full of compassion for the man he had loved so much and who had failed so much. Jairo shook his head sadly. "No, son, it was my fault indeed. I let myself be carried away by the illusion of false love and didn't see what was right in front of me. You, my son, my reason for living." Tears welled up in Jairo's eyes as he reached out to Gabriel, yearning for the forgiveness he so desired. "I promise to do everything possible to correct my mistakes. I love you more than I can express, and I will do everything in my power to show you that." Gabriel stood up and hugged his father tightly, feeling the weight of guilt and pain slowly dissipating. "I forgive you, Daddy," he whispered, his words full of love and understanding. "We all make mistakes, but what's important is to learn from them and move forward together." Jairo felt grateful, knowing he had a second chance to be the father Gabriel deserved. He stood up and held his son's hand, facing the uncertain future together, but full of hope. They walked together towards the dawn, united by love and forgiveness, ready to face the challenges that destiny had in store for them. As time passed, Jairo and Gabriel strengthened their bond every day. Together, they faced the challenges that life presented to them, supporting each other with love and understanding. Despite the ups and downs, their relationship became a solid bond of love and trust. One of the traditions they adopted was to visit Angela's grave in the cemetery together every week. Father and son went to the place where their beloved mother and wife rested. There, among the tombstones and the silence of the cemetery, they found a space to converse with Angela, sharing memories, emotions, and thoughts. For Jairo, these visits were a moment to remember the woman he had deeply loved, and for Gabriel, an opportunity to feel his mother's presence and love in a special way. Together, they talked to Angela as if she were still present, sharing joys, concerns, and hopes. In these moments of intimacy and connection, Jairo and Gabriel found comfort and strength in the eternal love that united them as a family. Despite Angela's absence, her spirit lived on in every memory, in every shared word, in every comforting hug. Thus, amidst laughter and tears, Jairo and Gabriel moved forward, building a future together on the foundations of love, loyalty, and the memory of those who were no longer physically present, but who remained eternally in their hearts. And in the silence of the cemetery, they found a sacred place where love endures beyond life itself.